afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Focus Forum. We are thrilled to have all of you present, where we have a huge registration today. I'm Rita Riker, president of Focus Greater Syracuse, and just so happy to have you here today. Just a reminder, the purpose of Focus Forums is to educate the public on what is going on with important community issues. And this one in particular has a lot of interest. Our topic today is Micron's planned investment in our community and insights on likely local impact and how we can influence that impact. We're absolutely delighted to have County Executive McMahon here to share those insights. Just a couple of items before we turn over the floor to our county exec. As usual, we're scheduled for 1 hour and we are recording this session. We have received a large number of questions from all of you, which we have shared with the county exec. We will try to get through as many as possible after his presentation. Also, we are in a meeting format. We do ask that we do ask that you mute yourself to help eliminate any noise issues. Now, very pleased to turn this over to our County Executive J. Ryan McMahon II. Ryan is the fourth Onondaga County Executive, having assumed office in November 2018. His public service career began as a city councilor in 2005 after being elected at the age of 25. He was reelected for a second term and quickly earned a reputation as a bipartisan problem solver. In 2011, Ryan was elected to the Onondaga County Legislature and was elected chairman in 2012, becoming the youngest chairman in county history. As chairman, his primary focus was job creation and ensuring good fiscal discipline in the county. And under his leadership, property taxes were brought down to historic lows. Upon becoming county executive in 2018, Ryan has placed a focus on three main initiatives: poverty, infrastructure, and economic development. He's a passionate supporter of small and local businesses. And in his first term, County Executive McMahon has led the way in securing major economic successes for our community, including JMA Wireless on the south side of Syracuse, Amazon in the town of Clay, and most recently, Micron. Clearly a lot of community interest in recently announced Micron development. Ryan, take it away.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity for having me today. And hopefully everybody is doing well with our first real snow of the season. Certainly won't be our last. Look, we're excited. And I guess I just kind of wanted to lead off with this, and I know thinking about the history of Focus and Chucky before the idea of being positive, this community received the ultimate validation on who we are and our potential moving forward from the greatest technology company of memory technology the world has ever seen, with the largest economic investment that the country has ever seen. So for many of you who have heard me speak about this, it's really time to kind of get that chip off our shoulder and understand that we've been saying things have been different, and people in roles like myself for the last 5-6 years, as we've seen very large investments, and we've seen progress on so many different socioeconomic issues and alignment of leadership and intentional ways to address problems. This all mattered in this process, but the real validator is that we went through the greatest site selection process anyone's ever seen, and we won. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. So I'll go through really quickly kind of what the behind the scenes of the site selection process was. Then we'll move forward to just the specifics of the actual deal, and then what we're doing to get ready for the deal, really the execution phase where we are now. And then I want to take your questions. Certainly, it's important to know that the White Pine Business Park was purchased by the county in 1999. What's unique about it, and it was unique then, it's even more unique now, was that it essentially was across the street from one of the most important national grid substations in all of North America, in the substation across from White Pine there on Cardinal and 31. The site has a unique ability to produce massive amounts of gas and electric, and it's reliable power and it's clean power. But the challenge with the site from 1999 to 2019 was it was too small to be in the game for any sort of large mega project. And so what we did coming out of COVID is we looked at how can we come up with a plan where we're not just recovering from the pandemic, but we're taking advantage of post-pandemic economic opportunities. And White Pine was the centerpiece of that. And so we've invested millions and millions of dollars and took a lot of risk to turn White Pine into the country's newest mega site. And knowing that we had this gas and electric, we had the ability to produce the types of gallons per day of water that a high-tech manufacturer needed. And we have this amazing asset in our county wastewater system where we have wastewater capacity, but as important, we have people that know what they're doing and can manage it. Most wastewater systems throughout upstate New York and other communities are managed at the very local level. We actually have a metropolitan wastewater system for most our county, and that's a real advantage when you look at competing for these types of projects. So we come up with our post-pandemic economic recovery strategy. Our goal was to turn White Pine. We knew from a close call in 2019 with the Taiwan Semiconductor Company that our site wasn't big enough, but we had something special. And so we took a lot of risk and we started to make the site larger. And we continued to purchase land, oftentimes criticized by our partners in the media. Key to that was we were working on our own lead generation, and we were actually working with other semiconductor companies before Micron, specifically Intel. And with Intel, we really had the validation, I did, that we had a close call with TSMC. We're now working with the Intel Corporation, and they're working with us and actually their technical team on where the site needed to go and how big it needed to be. And as we continue to acquire land, Intel kept on saying that it needs to get bigger, right? And at some point, we ran into a residential street, and we then had to negotiate with, essentially 40 homeowners and have very tough conversations that we need to buy their homes. And you can imagine those weren't often well-received conversations. And so but we did. We worked out with the homeowners. We had to pay a premium for every property. And we did so understanding that we were in the game in a real way. At the same time, some of the lessons that we learned during the pandemic about being reliant on supply chain, specifically from China, is not good for the country. It's not a good national security issue, specifically in the semiconductor industry, where we're so reliant on these chips. And so much of the manufacturing is in Asia. So nationally, there was a momentum really being led by Senator Chuck Schumer to repatriate that manufacturing here. So we were making our site bigger. We had the water, we had the wastewater, we had the gas and electric. We're already talking to companies that were looking at this, real conversations. And then all of a sudden you have kind of this national momentum. So more and more companies started looking at it, and we started more and more lead generation. And during that process, we talked to Micron. And really, we worked very closely with their site selector, who we already knew. And that process matured. We're still talking to Intel, Micron, and a couple other companies that I won't disclose because they haven't made their decisions yet where their investments will go. But we knew we were in the game, and we knew with each conversation what we had to do to position not just our site, but the community for this investment. And so really, when you look at the process, the most important thing in a site selection process is the site. If you don't have a site that can work, your community doesn't even get a look, right? That's end of story. So we quickly went from a 300-acre site to a 1,400-acre site, which put us in the game. We made the investments we needed to do in our wastewater and connections to sewer. We had the water infrastructure in place. and certainly the gas and electric at National Grid, huge. So our site was actually and is the best site in the country by far to do this. But that's not all it takes, right? You can have a great site, but there's many different factors that go into decision-making process. The second component really is your community. Are you a growing community? How is the company going to attract, retain, and develop talent? And so looking at that, we had to prove to the company we had the higher education partners, and we brought everybody together, right? I think of every great university and school we have in upstate New York. They were all at the table at one point meeting with the officials. We spoke very highly about our K through 12 educational infrastructure, which we're very proud of, but specifically our countywide STEAM school, which was a unique story, in certainly our technical programming with our partners at BOCES, our community colleges, SUNY EOC, all important pieces to that. But then we had to make commitments to help the company recruit. And one of the things about recruiting and retention, which in this community sometimes was previously hard to do, but moving forward, I know we're going to be better, is the reality is you need tier 1 amenities to recruit young engineers when it will take time to develop all those young engineers, right? And so we looked at that when we were being challenged at that, and understood part of our comprehensive recovery strategy needed to be looking at some of these amenities that would help support other industries in the community, but also would be attractive to a company like Micron. So make no mistake about it, when we were going through our aquarium proposal, that was a proposal that I put in front of the C-suite at Micron as an answer to what are some of your year-round amenities, because some people don't like the snow, believe it or not. Some people don't like to ski or snowmobile or ice skate. And when the CEO from California is in our community on a January day where it's 3 degrees outside, being able to take them to the Inner Harbor and show them what our plans were was actually quite effective. And so that's the thing, is you need these amenities to attract these types of companies. And we knew we could because we had this unique site. The reality was the company fell in love with our community. They were here probably 10 different times over the course of a year and a half. They got to know our greenways, our blueways. They got to know our downtown. They got to know our villages. They saw our suburban neighborhoods, and they knew they had a site. They fell in love with the community, and they knew they had higher ed partners, but they knew that we were a community that was intentional and shared their values of diversity and inclusion, trying to really grow the tech economy in underserved communities. And that all mattered at the end of the day. And we knew if the decision was made based off of site and community, we win. So how do you do that? The reality is finances, fiscal is huge. Incentives. We knew we could not be the high cost state or else we would not win. So there are really 3 levels of incentives. One, your local incentives. We put together a very robust incentive pack proposal, including the ability to invest in our wastewater treatment facility to meet their growing demand with each phase, which is not cheap. It'll be potentially as much as $750 million over 15 years. And so certainly that was on the table, as well as a robust pilot agreement, workforce development dollars, research and development dollars for partnerships with higher ed, all at the local level. So we knew locally we had the ability to produce more than some of the other localities in other communities. The state of New York, very good for manufacturing. In some way, there's no tax for manufacturing, but much of their project, think of this, it's a 20-year construction project. And so they're going to be building for 20 straight years. So our prevailing wages here are much higher than they are in Texas. So that was a challenge. And that's when the governor really stepped in with green chips legislation from the state of New York. And green chips absolutely helped level that playing field with Texas, because no CEO could go to their board of directors and say, yeah, we're going to go to the high cost state. It just wasn't going to happen. Certainly the green chips with Governor Hochul pushing that and getting it done as quickly as they did was really critical. And then the third component was financially against the rest of the world. And it had to be competitive with Asia and or Europe. And certainly this is a national security issue. What's going on with China and Taiwan should worry everybody. It really worries this industry. And so the CHIPS Act that passed with bipartisan support at the federal level was really critical to get this done. And Senator Schumer, really helped champion that. And he got the investment tax credit in there, which was specific to Micron's needs to really make the investment much quicker than what they planned. So without the three things, without the site, New York State's not even in the game. Without green chips to level the playing field with other states, we probably don't. We wouldn't have won. We would have been the high cost state. We wouldn't have won. And then certainly those two things happen. Then you have the situation with Senator Schumer. And Senator Schumer really helped deliver. Congressman Katko also supported it. And you saw that legislation passed. And then we had about 4 to 6 weeks of really heavy negotiations on final details with Micron. And we got through all that, which was important because we knew when we made the announcement at Syracuse University that the deal was really done. And so that was kind of like the behind the scenes process. Looking at what the deal is, right? So it's a 2-phase project. The first phase is $48 billion, 2 fabs. They've already put an application in the IDA for that. The second phase, essentially about a $55 billion project, another 2 fabs, could be triggered in year 7 to year 10, depending on market conditions within their industry. But you're looking at 9,000 direct Micron jobs, engineers, technicians, management, certainly some potential R&D, but most of their R&D is going to be done in Boise. And then you're looking at 40 to 60,000 supply chain, construction, and other spin-off jobs. I say that that's a broad range, but there's been 4 different analysis done on this, and that's kind of where each of the different independent analysis ended up on those numbers. So what are you talking about? You're talking about unprecedented economic opportunity, but unprecedented opportunity related to growth. And so how do we do this in a way where we meet the moment and we take advantage of this opportunity, but we do it in a way that's smart. And we do it in a way where 20 years from now, we can drive around and look at new revitalized neighborhoods, maybe new neighborhoods, and they look pretty close to where they are today, 20 years from now, after they've been newly invested in, right? Let's not make the mistakes of the past moving forward without well thought out development, low design standards, and which creates potential eyesores down the road and nuisances down the road for communities. So timing wise, this couldn't have happened at a better time. We're ready with our countywide comprehensive plan, which is going to go to the legislature in 2023 to help be a roadmap. And certainly we're not going to invest in other communities that are seeing the immediate growth to help them with their own comprehensive planning, and then investing in certain areas for more micro level specific planning as roadmaps for developers, right? Is where things are going. We're a community of 477,000 people today. We are studying Greensboro, North Carolina, which is a community of about 620,000 people, because we think we'll probably be there, if not exceed that community in the near future. So what does that mean at the governmental level? One, we're asking the legislature to give us the ability to hire more planners. And we have a resolution there asking for 4 new planners that will work specifically on this project and these initiatives. 2, we want the legislature to approve the comprehensive plan. What are some of the key fundamentals of our plan? Plan on strong centers, right? Look at strong centers as ways to grow both commercially but residentially. Let's plan on housing in neighborhoods, understanding we need growing communities have all of the above related to housing strategies: senior housing, affordable housing, mixed income housing, mixed use housing, market rate housing, right? We need all of the above because, quite frankly, our housing units are we're behind the 8 ball today, and that's part of the reason why through inventory challenges you see rising assessments as fast as they are right now and rising sales prices, right? So we need to plan on more housing, but we also need to look at existing neighborhoods and look at ways of helping connect those neighborhoods to centers and through corridor investments, infrastructure investments, and potentially new housing investments. Some of our neighborhoods were built, still good neighborhoods, but the housing doesn't really meet the needs of the future. Really, one of our strengths that we need to continue to do, and we do in our budget this year, but we're going to look at moving forward, is planning on greenways and blueways, right? So looking at continuing to look at our trail systems as assets, connectivity, walkability, our blueways, our water, whether it's the creek going through the city of Syracuse, all the way into Onondaga Lake, the Inner Harbor, out our rivers out in our suburbs, right? Really looking at that. Plan on community mobility, right? Not just getting people to workplaces like Amazon and or Micron and or Anheuser-Busch, certainly, but how do we move across the community differently moving forward? Bus rapid transit is going to be a component of that, right? We're very close to being able to launch BRT in the city of Syracuse. What does BRT look like in the future? And do we even look at more transit opportunities moving forward? And then certainly we need to continue to plan on agriculture. Our ag economy is the 8th largest in New York State. We need to be able to preserve farmland. And that's going to be a key component of our plan. But we're working with that. We're certainly looking at tier 1 initiatives that we have that we need to help execute on to help meet the early demands of Micron and of the construction workforce that's going to be coming, right? And so when we think about that, what are some of our tier 1 projects that we really need to execute on? Our Shoppingtown Mall project is a key project. When you look at the Blueprint 15 project in the south side of the city of Syracuse, key project. When you look at Great Northern Mall, key project. Other centers where we see real planning dollars going in Hamlets, Brewerton, Three Rivers and Clay, certainly Mattydale, the Inner Harbor, really focused potentially Erie Boulevard, and other corridors throughout the city, but also other corridors throughout the county that we want to focus in on. And it's all based off of developing centers, developing corridors, tying things into neighborhoods. So we are undergoing heavy planning for development and what we're seeing. Certainly we're seeing a ton of real estate speculation early on in Clay and Cicero. That's going to happen. That's going to then move probably to Lysander and then other parts of the community. Certainly when wherever you see land, you're going to see a lot of speculation. Then you're going to see kind of speculation related to key real estate, existing infrastructure and buildings throughout the community. But yeah, some of the land listings in Clay and Cicero have been remarkably, very high. In addition to that, workforce development is going to be a key component. Micron is going to pick their workforce partners, right? They are deeply engaged already with our K through 12 school districts, whether it's the city of Syracuse, Cicero, North Syracuse, Liverpool, some of our rural districts, our eastern school districts, western school districts, all are going to engage in creating, STEM curriculum. Certainly our countywide STEAM school is going to play a huge component in this. And then certainly BOCES, SUNY EOC, all of our workforce partners are going to have roles here. And workforce development isn't just going to be for Micron and the semiconductor industry, but we need our workforce partners to take clear leadership roles in other industries too, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. A couple other highlights. There's a $500 million community benefit agreement here. where Micron's putting in $250 to $300 million. The state is putting in $200 million. And then some supply chain partners of Micron will be investing as well. Certainly, this is going to go into workforce development, community agencies, community efforts. There's going to be an advisory panel created with community members to help advise Micron. Certainly Micron will have the final say on where their dollars go. But this is really, really good engagement. We've had multiple meetings with stakeholders, town halls, that we've had. We're going to have more town halls every time Micron comes into town with their with their C-suite and their workforce team and their foundation. They want to get out, but they're very engaged in wanting to help address challenges we have in the community. They are a solution to some of our long-term community challenges, right? Through economic opportunity. It's not their job to solve our community's problems. I think that's one thing that we can't look at, is it's no company's job to come here and say it's your job to go fix generations of poverty. That's a community problem. Micron is part of the solution to that problem. And so we're really, really pumped up that they're here with that. Another key component outside of workforce development is taking advantage and making sure that we land the supply chain companies to locate here. I've been meeting with supply chain companies, very large ones, important ones. Certainly it looks like all of them will be here and have a presence. What the presence looks like, whether they're just doing sales service for the tools that they make that will be in the fab, or whether they're going to be doing additional warehousing potentially, and or maybe manufacturing. Those are all opportunities that we're working through these companies with. But again, this represents economic opportunity for our residents, but also understanding we know that we're going to have new residents in the community, which is really strong. Population growth is critical to helping provide the resources to address problems in the community. So a lot of great things going on. We've been through the selection process, kind of the celebratory process where we hosted the President of the United States and the community, which is always remarkable when you have a presidential visit. And then now we're in the execution process, right? We're working to execute on workforce pipelines. We're working to execute on supply chain pipelines. We're working to execute on planning so that the development that's coming is done in a way that is strategic and it is truly an asset to communities. And we're working to execute on the construction timeline. So let me just go through that timeline with you, and then I'll open things up for questions. But right now we're undergoing, we have a generic environmental impact statement already done. Basically we took the Intel project and we studied that. The Micron project is similar, but some differences. So we'll go back and have to restudy the information we have to make sure that the traffic mitigation that needs to be done and infrastructure investments are accurate. Certainly, we have to put forward a wetland mitigation strategy for the wetlands on the site. And certainly we think we have one where the site's very large. We can create wetlands north of the site to offset the wetlands we would lose south. Then there's a federal review. Hopefully those reviews are done in the third quarter of 2023. Then you'll see some low-key site prep construction at the end of 23, full-blown construction in 2024. And then the first fab being built at the end of 2025 with tools going in. And then certainly Micron needs to be making products in 2026. So your first wave of hiring is certainly going to be construction. Some Micron hires in 23, but you'll have 5,000 construction jobs. Local trades are going to be all over this. We'll have to bring in outside trades from outside the state to meet the needs. Certainly some specialties for the semiconductor industry will come in from around the country, if not the world. This is going to be a massive construction project. And so part of this on the construction side that we were really happy to negotiate was minority women and veteran-owned business goals related to construction vendors. So just like our county projects, you'll see that done as well. In addition to that, you'll see the company, when they are operating, has agreed to use some of their operating budget to source regular operation spend through minority, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses as well. Just things that just private sector companies don't do. They just don't do these things, make these types of commitments. In addition to that, you may have heard me reference the green chips legislation from the state earlier. Part of the green chips legislation, green is there not because it is the color of money, but green is there because of environmental and sustainability goals that are put on this project. This project is going to be a gold LEED certified fab, which will be the greenest and most sustainable fab anywhere in the world, essentially. And if you look at Micron's website, if you go to it today, you can read about their own sustainability goals, which are very aggressive. And they walk the walk when it comes to these goals. And they challenged us very much so to challenge them in this process related to that. So I'm saying that I've given you a pretty good overview. Happy to take questions and drill in more into some of the specific topics.
Thank you, Ryan. We have lots of questions, and I'm going to turn this over to Brian Hoke, who, if I can find him here, I will. So Brian, are you available?
I am. Yep.
Okay. So you can go ahead and ask questions, and I will spotlight you as soon as I find you.
All right. Thank you. Ryan, thanks for being here. Excuse me. Thanks for your remarks. Thanks to everybody, the 162 of you who are joining us today on this deep and dark December winter's day. We got quite a few questions in advance. I'll ask folks who submitted questions in advance if they'd like to pose their question live here today. If you're here, great. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine too. I'll keep an eye on the chat and try to call on some of those folks too. But a few housekeeping rules. Ask you to be brief. I'd ask you to stay muted if you're not actually asking a question. And of course, all of us to be civil and respectful of each other, because there are a lot of us here, obviously with differing viewpoints, which is great, but let's make sure we keep it a positive experience for everybody. So I had a lot of questions. Thanks to everybody for submitting so many. We got one from Aggie Lane, and a lot of these questions touch on things that the county executive spoke about in his remarks. But Aggie, you had a question about the community benefits. Would you be comfortable asking your question now? I could certainly do it for you if you'd rather not. Aggie, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Could you ask it?
Yes. Thank you for posing the question. So you had asked about the $500 million in community benefits that was part of the deal. And if those benefits are specific to the Syracuse workforce, and how will the community know how well Micron is doing in delivering those benefits? Brian, you touched on this, but if you wouldn't mind delving into that a little more deeply, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so the makeup of the advisory committee is, I think, 11 members that the Empire State Development is going to put together. And then there is, I think they're working to try to make sure it's as diverse of a group as possible. But we, the county, obviously we own the site, right? And we have the most investment upfront out of any governmental partner in this. But we're an unofficial member, right? So I will have one pick on the advisory committee, as will the town of Clay, the city of Syracuse, the state of New York, and then Micron. Micron has final say on whatever they spend their money on, but the types of things that we spoke about, potentially housing initiatives, workforce initiatives, obviously, investments in STEM and STEAM. They've already committed $10 million to the STEAM school and other local STEM programming. Potentially in transportation, although it's a little bit tough for a company to lead there. That's really the responsibility of government. Certainly childcare is something that they've leaned into. They've already made investments in the YMCA. as something. So if you think about traditional barriers to employment, they want to help in those areas, and that's where they want to see the dollars spent. But it will be transparent. It will be open. Everybody will know where it is. The Y already has received an investment, the STEAM school, and other STEM dollars. We have invested the county $5 million for a clean room at OCC. Micron is going to it's going to be a $10 million clean room for them for workforce development. Micron's going to match that $5 million. So these are the types of things that are already happening. The most received a partnership. You can see where their interests are. Their interests are taking young people and any people of any age, and getting them interested in the STEM space, and because that's going to create the workforce needed to meet 9,000 jobs at Micron, but another other supply chain jobs are in the same space. And we love it because that's where the jobs are in the future. And advanced manufacturing is where we want to be as a community. We're seeing it with JMA Wireless. We're seeing it here with Micron, the supply chain companies. We have it with Lockheed, SRC, TTM, and Saab. We got it here. We got something going here.
That's great. Thank you. We had a question from Maria Garcia about economic development. Maria, if you're here, would you like to pose your question to the county executive? I'll ask it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So there must be two Maria Garcias. I'm the other Maria Garcia, so you'll have to pose the original Maria Garcia's question, even though you see my name up there. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for being here. So the other Maria asked, what are the economic development and small business incubator opportunities that will result from these partnerships? And specifically, does the board include members from underserved communities coming from the Syracuse area? Again, Ryan, you touched on some of this, but if you wouldn't mind sharing a little more, thank you.
Yeah, without question, the advisory committee will have members from the city of Syracuse. So, but one of the other things that the initial commitments from Micron was, I believe they're making a $10 to $20 million investment into a venture fund. And then they specifically made commitments to lend in minority-dominated banking institutions as well, really helping to create a broad ecosystem. And these are specific commitments. This from Micron. They have a foundation, right? So this is not the Micron Foundation. The foundation is going to make investments as well. And we're going to be their most strategic and important campus in the world. So we really lucked out here. And again, when Sanjay came into Syracuse on January 3rd of last year, or this year, right? It's 22.
That's the CEO.
Yeah. They challenged us on what is your community doing? Are you intentional with diversity and inclusion, D&I? Showcase what are your efforts, and that matters to this company, and they want to continue to invest they're in tech, and tech has a history of not doing well related to participation from minority communities. It's just a fact. And so we shared with them our community-wide effort with the JP Morgan Advancing Cities grant, where we were awarded a grant to really help develop infrastructure to create this ecosystem in our minority communities in tech. And the communities that won were Miami, Chicago, San Diego, and Louisville, and then Syracuse. This happened 3 years ago. And so all these things were intentional, but they're important to Micron, and you're going to see more folks from their foundation. Robert Simmons from their foundation, go follow him on Twitter. You'll see what they do every day and what they invest in every day. Pretty remarkable.
Gotcha. Thank you. Take a few questions from the chat, and thank you to everybody for continuing to put questions there. Mary Kuhn, you had a couple questions there. Would you like to pose either of those to the county executive?
Sure. Thanks for this. Very informative. I'm wondering, will the county be continuing to own the land that Micron will be building on, or will they buy it, or will we rent it? And my second question is about the supply chain people that will be coming. Is this being seen as a regional rather than a county level? I assume this is a regionally, this Micron will inform the entire region. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, so when you look at the actual real estate, the site's going to be divided into two parcels. The first parcel, for the first phase, Micron will purchase from the county, and the county has agreed to reinvest those proceeds into infrastructure to support the project. The second parcel we will own up until they're ready to move forward with Fab 3 and 4. Related to supply chain, part of the selection process is you need to show essentially where their key supply chain partners will go. As one Micron official quoted to us, I'm looking out my window in Boise, Idaho right now, and I see these 8 companies. So your tier 1 supply chain will absolutely locate in Onondaga County. Most supply chain partners, if they're not within 5 to 10 minutes of the site, don't even actually, it's probably not in their interest to make the investment to come to your community. Saying that, we are working regionally with I met with all the economic development agencies of all the central New York counties this week about what sites do you have, what's ready. Some of you are within some of the geographic restraints that these companies want, and please share those with us. Route 31, we share from Cayuga County to Madison County. We're certainly Oswego County is within 10 minutes by far. They're actually closer to the site than the city of Syracuse is. So, there's a lot of opportunities regionally here, but you got to have sites. And the reason why we were in the game is because we made the investments necessary to have a shovel-ready site, essentially, that could produce the power, the water, and wastewater. So where I see the real opportunities for these other communities is, the reality is, putting together another 1,400 acre site is not going to happen in Onondaga County. And so when we get, right now, we get a lot of other economic development opportunities looking for places to be in our county because of what's going on. We aren't going to be able to do some of those projects because we just won't be able to put together the land necessary. So I think that's a real opportunity for some of these other counties, not so much in the semiconductor industry, although they may get some supply chain, but all the other industries that are going to be coming, they're going to need a place to go to. So we are coordinating from that standpoint. Certainly, Micron's our most important commercial client now, and we're going to treat them that way and not inundate the company with other governments. Because again, it's not Micron's job to, find supply chain leads for our community or other communities, quite frankly.
Gotcha. I'll summarize a whole ton of questions we got, right? Understandably. How can I get involved, right? How can I find a job in this? How can this benefit an organization that I care about? How can my company get involved? I'm sure that's like asking how long is a piece of string, but if you wouldn't mind touching on that, both near term and long term. Thanks for any thoughts you have there.
Yeah, related to employment directly for the company, you're probably going to see that really pick up in 2025. But looking at construction, I mean, if you're looking for a career to get into right now, that's going to start probably end of 2023, and maybe even sooner because there's lots of construction going on. But give you an idea, these trades jobs are all going to be 6-figure jobs, every one of them, and the ability to work the overtime that will be granted on this to meet the timeline. These are amazing economic opportunities. So programs like Syracuse Build, which we worked in partnership with this opportunity, and your regular unions, these are all great opportunities to get involved. Related, if you have a business and you could potentially be a supplier for Micron, for their operation, they're going to have vendor days and supplier days in the future. Right now, the general contractor, the head of it, has not been selected yet. So we just have nothing really to report on that. But it's certainly, there's local labor requirements and all the benefits. So you have to show that the local labor is not there. in order to get the benefits. So everybody's going to get an opportunity to participate in this construction project that can. But Micron's going to be here, right? So my advice, if I didn't hit on your specific operation there, come to a town hall meeting. We're going to keep having them. We've had Clay Cicero. We've met with faith-based leaders. We've met with multiple meetings with the business community. They've had multiple meetings with all the school districts. We're going to go and have town halls in the city. We're going to have town halls in southern towns, western towns, eastern towns, right? So come, listen to hear from the company and ask the questions. And they've left town hall meetings with certainly new potential opportunities to partner on with various organizations.
That's great. Thank you. My focus board colleague, Bob Haley, had a question about planning. Bob, would you like to ask your question?
Well, thank you, Ryan, for what is a quite thorough update on the complexities ahead of us. I also saw in the chat a comment, if I can loop some of these questions back to your early reference about a chip on our shoulder. And just with that thought, I wanted to parallel that thought, not as a negative, but to look at our planning moving forward is having the best of the new ideas from around the country and the youth come into the pool for our planning vision for the future. And how, because we're looking at the young people, we're looking at creative ideas, we're looking at new housing modes, we're looking at new ideas for towns and villages. How can we get the best of everything into this future planning soup that we're trying to put together?
Yeah, great question. So here's what we're doing. And again, if you think I'm missing the ball, you can send me an email. But we recognize that there's things that are going to have to be done that are different, right? And towns have planning boards, right? And good servants, good public servants, but maybe don't have the expertise or the skills necessarily to understand what housing trends are. For example, mortgage rates, when we started the site selection process 3 years ago, were below 3%. Today, they're at 6.5%. Home ownership is not as easy. So building just your traditional single family home cannot just be the answer to having to produce 30 to 40,000 units as a region. You need all the above, including construction of single family homes that are rentals. That's being done in Nashville, being done in Denver, being done in Charleston, all over the place. So these are things that we have to work through, but related specifically to planning, we need to plan smartly, creatively, and effectively, and with real thoughtfulness. And I am concerned about some of the firepower just locally to do it and do it as quickly as we need to do it. So we're going to be procuring certainly and trying to bring on all of the not just local but national names into the portfolio that we can bring on, because we envision at least probably 5 or 6 comprehensive plans for suburban communities with specific planning related to potential waterfront communities. So and potentially adaptive reuse for other communities, right? So we want to bring in a lot of firepower with lots of ideas so that we really got something we can look into the future with, but in the future look back and say, we got that one right.
Gotcha. Thank you. Charlene Tarver, excuse me, you posed a question in the chat about transportation. Would you like to ask?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Charlene Tarver. I'm with the Women's Economic Institute. I'm actually a native of Syracuse, but have been away for the last 33 years, so almost 3.5 decades. There's a lot of discussion nationally around DI and here locally about the county's commitment to that. My question is specifically about the transportation equity assessment, and of course, making sure that the South Side is included and that folks have the opportunity to be able to avail themselves of those jobs. So if you would not mind maybe discussing a little bit, County Executive McMahon, about the transportation assessment. Can you talk a little bit about that? Thank you.
Yeah, and any one of these selection processes, if the workforce component is a box that you have to check, right? And so they're not just talking about engineers. 40% of these jobs will be technicians, and so you need to show how you move people to and from the facility, most likely 3 shifts. So we obviously had to make sure that we have the commitments related to transportation with Central, that we could do that. So that's done. I think long-term, the way we're looking at transportation is we even need to be more creative than, and again, we have some time, right? This isn't, all the jobs don't come right in the first year. We'll have 3,500 jobs at Micron in 26 with a lot of the supply chain, but they're going to ramp up. But we'll have BRT in the city by then. The funding's there. It's pretty much ready to roll. But looking at a different type of transportation system for all of our larger employers is something we're looking at. And quite frankly, this doesn't necessarily impact the city as far as another BRT line, but certainly all the other counties. And where you're going to see a lot of the population growth is on Route 31. So you're going to see potentially planning for BRT on Route 31 at some point as well. But that's a box that the company demands that you check, not just us selfishly wanting to make sure that all of our community from every end of it have an opportunity at the employment for, on this really what's going to be a semiconductor campus, right? At the site and then across the street from the site where we purchase land for supply chain.
Gotcha. Thank you. We're nearing the end of time, so I'll pose the last question to summarize one that was put to us in advance by Edward Egan. What's the biggest risk you perceive in terms of completion of the project? What worries you? What do we need to guard against? How can we push it along?
Yeah, so right now, I think the timeline to actually execute on the construction is better. A lot of people have seen the semiconductor industry is in a little bit of a downturn now. The downturn isn't because of demand, it's because of like everybody in COVID and roles and our government, we did the same thing. We bought more of things than we needed when we thought they wouldn't be there. So these chips, there was a lot of chips that were sold in 2020 and 21 and 22. So now there's an inventory issue. The demand's still very high, but there's more chips than in the marketplace than are needed, right? So in 23, all the companies are scaling back. So that's construction schedule actually was more aggressive than what was announced. So now we kind of corrected that. So I'm not worried about that. I am worried about getting our workforce partners kind of clarified who's doing what. Micron's going to determine who they want their tier 1 partners to be, but related to all technicians and making sure that we're producing lab technicians for hospitals and we're producing nurses and we're all these other economic sectors that are going to need to grow as well. Getting the right workforce partners there and having them own that space, that worries me. Another thing that I didn't think I would be really worried about, but right now I'm most worried about related to the development and what happens, hotels. We don't have enough hotels right now. And I think the construction companies, some of these hotels are easy, low-hanging fruit to grab up for housing for construction companies that will come into the community, which will create issues there. But I really like, what I really like is our K through 12 pipelines, the engagement with our school districts working together. I feel really good about having the site ready, and certainly feel really good about the success we're having on the supply chain side. And on the planning side, I'm really excited. We're getting these other local communities that really want to buy in. They want to work together. They want to coordinate, and that bodes very, very well. So we're seeing a lot of investment, a lot of very large investors wanting to invest in the community. So we're in a position I never could have imagined 4 years ago.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your remarks, for answering all these questions. Rita, back to you in the studio.
Yes. So Ryan, thank you so much. This has been very informative. And I know there are a lot of questions out there, but you did a great job in the ones that we posed to you. Brian, thank you for moderating that discussion. So we are I'm hoping, thank you so much for all of our 160 plus people who listened in today. I hope you found this informative and enjoyable. We'll be posting this on our website in a few days, within a few days. So if you know of other people who are interested in learning more, we do get a good number of people who go back and listen to our recordings. Focus is able to do these forums and our other work based upon volunteer donations, and we're always happy to take those donations. Even $10 helps us a lot. And focussyracuse.org will get you to our website. And finally, just a big thank you again to everybody. And I wish you all a very happy holiday season. Take care.